I'm Andy Lazor. I'm a water quality specialist with the University of Maryland Extension, and welcome to this Wednesday water webinar on septic system maintenance. So I'll be sharing with you how systems work, and then also with that information, talk a little bit about some of the practices that homeowners can take to maintain their system. So we have what's called a conventional septic system. That basically means that systems that have been used for many, many years, and these are very simple devices, but they provide a very important service to the home by treating the wastewater. So it works off of physics and gravity, essentially. Water comes from the home, goes into the septic tank, and then goes out into what's called the drain field. And there's different types of drain fields, but the idea there is to distribute it evenly over a pre-designed amount of soil surface, and for that wastewater to infiltrate into the soil where it is broken down, both biologically and chemically, and then it continues to be absorbed and the bacteria is eliminated. But eventually, some of that wastewater contaminants will reach groundwater. So the basic physics of a septic tank is, again, very simple device. Its main purpose is for storage of wastewater, but also separation of the solids, as well as the fats, oils, and greases from the wastewater itself. So again, waste come in from the house to this baffle. The solids will settle on the bottom, and the fats, oil, and grease will float to the top. This is a two-chambered tank, and it has this dividing wall right here, which again keeps the solids and the fats, oils, and greases in that first chamber, but the more clarified wastewater will continue on over to the second chamber, may get a little bit more settling of solids, a little bit more separation, but then that more clarified wastewater again leaves and goes out into the drain field. This particular tank is showing a filter. It's a very fine mesh filter, which helps reduce the amount of organic material going out into the drain field. This particular tank also has risers, access risers. And then again, this is to service the tank, say for example, to look and to inspect it, but then also to pump out the fats, oils, and grease and the solids periodically. So again, a very simple gravity type of device. Here's a close-up of one of the filters that I mentioned that can be pulled out, and needs to be pulled out every 6 to 12 months, depending upon the size of the tank and the number of residents in the home. But again, you can see the finer organic material that's trapped on that fine mesh screen. And again, it's important, very important, to keep as much of the organic material out of the drain field. You don't want those organics clogging the soil pores, because then that will reduce the lifespan of the drain field. We have different types of drain fields. Here's a conventional trench system. This is a small system, just a 2-trench system. Over in this direction is where the septic tank would be, and then there's this distribution box which allows for even flow, level flow to both of these trenches. And that's important because you want to distribute as much of the wastewater over the entire surface. Each septic system is designed for the site conditions. That includes the soil type and soil quality, but then also it's designed on the size of the home. So it was determined in this design that 2 trenches were fine of a specified length. That provides enough surface area to handle the daily flow of wastewater expected to go into that septic system. Here is what's called the chamber system. This basically is a 3-foot diameter corrugated pipe that is cut in half, and it basically is replacing the gravel. Again, in all these drain fields, the idea is to spread that wastewater out over as much of the surface design that's required. Here's another system. Instead of using gravel, it's basically artificial media with a corrugated pipe inside. This one's been opened up for display purposes, but again, this is just ease of installation rather than using gravel. this system and the chambers go in a lot faster. Then there's drip tubing. These tend to be in the shallow regions of the soil, the most bioactive region of the soil, generally 6 to 12 inches deep. And then here's a sand mound. So in this case, they may not have had adequate soil depth for treatment, and therefore they had to go up. And that includes specialized sand to accommodate the wastewater. They're still using natural soil beneath the mound, but again, they had to go up in order to get ample soil depth to affect proper treatment. And we have what's called aerobic treatment units, or in Maryland, we call them best available technology, or BATs. And this is basically a miniature wastewater treatment plant, if you will, but it replaces the septic tank, and they have multiple compartments. And here, again, wastewater is coming from the house, goes into this first settling chamber, which is much smaller than a regular septic tank. But again, same principle, allowing for the solids to settle, the fats, oils, and grease or scum to float. Then that clarified wastewater goes to the next chamber. And this is where it becomes enhanced or aerobic. We add oxygen in this chamber, and that is basically supplying the oxygen bacteria need to break down the organic material. And then that water then goes into another settling or clarification chamber, again, trying to remove a little bit more of the solids. And then from there, the wastewater can go, actually can be recirculated back through the system to enhance the overall treatment, or it goes into another chamber, and then it can be either pumped or gravity flow out to the drain field. Important to notice the water quality that comes out of one of these ATUs or BAT units. It's very clear in contrast to almost like a black or brown water out of a normal septic tank. So again, enhanced treatment. And one of the advantages, not only reducing the nitrogen and organic material, but you're reducing those very fine solids and organic material that can reduce the lifespan of a drain field and clog those soil pores. So these BAT units, again, very efficient in removing nitrogen, 55 to going on 80% of the nitrogen, in contrast to about 5 or 6% in a regular septic tank. But they cost. Maryland has a grant program that can be accessed to help offset the cost of these units. But again, they're very effective, very efficient. Some of the reasons, obviously, that you should maintain your septic system is, think about it as the most expensive appliance or mechanical device in your home. More expensive than anything that you have in the kitchen, and typically much more expensive than your HVAC unit, depending upon the type of system that you have. So protect your investment, maintain your system, and it'll last a long time, and that will save you money. Certainly, it also protects your property value. If you have a system that's not working properly, that can affect the sale. And then, as important, or maybe more important, is that your septic system is also potentially protecting your health, your family health, and your neighbor's health. By having a well-maintained system, it's effectively doing its job, reducing the pathogens from the wastewater, and therefore the pathogens are not entering groundwater and contaminating somebody's drinking water well. EPA has a lot of great resources on their website. This is just an example. Some of the major practices that homeowners can employ to maintain their system. Again, talking about your septic tank pumping frequency. Again, the general rule of thumb is every 3 to 5 years. The more occupants you have and the smaller size of your septic tank, the more frequent that you would need to pump. And if you have a BAT or aerobic treatment unit, then that pumping is a kind of a special process, and you rely on your service provider to determine when you need to pump your tank. So some basic tips is to conserve water. You know, you'd be surprised how much water a leaking toilet, for example, can add to your overall load of your septic system. Your septic system is designed to handle a certain amount of water. So if you have leaks, you're adding water. And if you have an older system where the soil is not able to take the wastewater as well as it used to, this could be overloading it, and you might get some surfacing or even slow draining fixtures, or worse case scenario would be a backup of wastewater into the home. You can also spread out your laundry over several days rather than just doing it all in one day. Garbage disposals are not recommended because they chop up the organics and don't decompose as well. And certainly draining any fats, oils, and grease into your septic system is not a good idea. Even though the tank will help to separate that, excessive fats, oils, and grease can actually add to that material getting out in the drain field, and that can clog the soil pores, which is needed for that wastewater to infiltrate into the soil. Any of the chemicals, for example, some of the chemicals that we use daily, the regular amount of bleach, for example, or other cleaners that we use is fine to use, but you certainly don't want to dispose of, say, an old bottle down the drain, because that can kill the beneficial bacteria in your septic system. Very important is to only flush toilet paper, nothing else, none of the wipes, even though they say they're flushable or septic tank friendly, they're not. They can clog up filters, they can clog up the baffles, harm an aerobic treatment unit. And then if you have your gutters or any other stormwater, your neighbor's stormwater, make sure that it runs away from your tank in the drain field. You do not want standing water over your drain field, because that's basically adding to the load of that system. So if you have to put in a berm or a swale or even some French drains to move that stormwater away from your tank in your drain field, that's very important. And another really important tip is do not drive on your drain field, because that packs the soil. And if you pack that soil, you're reducing the ability of that soil to take that wastewater. Don't plant trees. Certain trees and certain types of drain fields don't mix well at all. For example, trees love nutrients and water, and that's what a drain field is, nutrients and water. And the tree roots can actually enter the drain field, enter the pipe, clog up the pipe. Pump your tank, as we talked about, every 3 to 5 years. And if you have a filter on your tank, be sure that that is cleaned annually. And then also have your system inspected periodically. If you're having your tank pumped, that's a good time to have your overall system inspected. So those are some basic tips, basic operation methods of a system. It's fairly straightforward, but it does require careful attention to maintenance practices. There's a lot of resources depending upon the state that you're in. Your local county health department is also a wealth of information. They typically issue the septic tank and well permits, but they may have information on your septic system. For example, its location, its type, when it was installed. So contact them. And if you're concerned about your well, they can also provide you information with well testing, things like that. So take advantage of these resources. Thank you.